The Lord be with you. The gospel writer Matthew assumes that you know an awful lot of stuff that you might not know. So, if any of the things I state here are things that you don't know, do let me know because I keep thinking we need to kind of do a biblical literacy course, though I don't know if there's a substitute to actually reading the whole Bible on a somewhat regular basis. Spending 10, 15 minutes a day reading through the entire Bible every year or two. Uh, Not sure there's a substitute, but still thinking about going over the basic narrative. So maybe I'll redo this video, but all this stuff is on my mind. So let me first give a brief, kind of some historical time points. So let me start with 2000 BC, and I'm going to say somewhere around 2000 BC, give or take a few hundred years, you have Abraham, and you should know who Abraham is. Yes. Around 1250 BC, you have Moses and the covenant with Moses. 1250 BC or 1450 BC, take your pick. Doesn't bother me which. You got Moses, and hopefully you know who Moses is. Then you got David about 1000 BC, and following him, you've got Solomon and the building of the temple. 586 BC, you have the Babylonian captivity, the Babylonian exile, the destruction of the temple, the destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BC. Then you got the return from exile, 70 years or so after that. 4 BC, you have the death of Herod the Great. Jesus was born sometime before Herod the Great's death in 4 BC. Okay, so having kind of that basic historical framework, I think, is helpful. But then you'll notice that the gospel writer, Matthew, he expects you to know Old Testament history. He expects you to know who David is and the son of David is. He expects you to know what the word Christ means, who the Messiah is. He expects you to know who Abraham is and who the son of Abraham is. He expects you to know who Abraham and Isaac and Jacob are and the promises God made to them and the promises God made to David. He expects you to know the resonance with the phrase, the book of the genealogy. You should know that phrase, where that comes from. You're expected to know what the Babylonian captivity is, the one that I mentioned earlier in 586 BC. You're supposed to know things like there was a guy named Joseph in the book of Genesis who was quite a dreamer who rescued his people by bringing them down to Egypt. You're supposed to know that God rescued his son, Israel, by bringing them out of Egypt. You're supposed to know about a 40-year wandering in the wilderness where God's people, Israel, where his son, Israel, was tested in the wilderness and failed the test. You're supposed to know about the prophecies of God returning his people out of Babylonian captivity and bringing them up and over and down from the north into the territory of Nazareth and Galilee and all that. You're supposed to know about those prophecies that are found in Isaiah. You're supposed to know books like Hosea and Isaiah and Jeremiah and why was Rachel weeping for her children? You're supposed to know these things. Matthew assumes that you know these things. Uh, and then later on, he's gonna assume that you know Daniel chapter 7 and the Son of Man. He's going to assume that you know these things. He's going to assume that you know who Moses was and how Moses went up on a mountain and brought down God's Torah, God's law. How Moses' face radiated and shined with the glory of God. You're supposed to know about how Moses rescued his people from slavery. You're also supposed to know that there are these patterns of things like death and resurrection, humiliation and exaltation, patterns of God's people going astray and then God punishing them and rescuing them. You're supposed to know patterns like sin and judgment and grace that are found in the Old Testament that Jesus is going to be reliving. Uh, Nothing else coming to mind, but I think there are some others like that. So I'm going to end this one right here. But if any of these things you're like going, huh, about, it probably means that we need some work. Uh, you're going to be missing stuff, and that's okay. I mean, it's good if you get to Jesus and Christ crucified and raised from the dead. But if you do want to go deeper, which is one of our values here at King of Glory Lutheran Church, you're going to want to know all those things that I just alluded to off the top of my head that Matthew assumes that you know about. All right. God's peace be with you. Amen.